We're on.
Welcome everybody to our first NDIS Essentials. I don't want to call it a workshop because it's going to be fun and it's not going to be heaps of work, but it's going to teach you heaps of things. So welcome aboard. My name is Sandy. I'm the founder of Thrive, Tribe & Co. along with my beautiful business partner, Steph Wicks.
Hello.
And today we have the pleasure of interviewing Tanvi from AFEA Care Services. She is going to be helping us over the next 4 weeks with learning everything that we can around the NDIS and how you can really, get the most out of the NDIS for the person that you are caring for, so whether that's a child or an adult or whoever it is that you're supporting. So we would love to hear your questions around this as well. So if you're tuning into one of our presentations for the first time, just just click the StreamYard link at the top, and that will allow us to see your name when you ask questions, and we can feature some of your questions in our broadcast. But let's get straight into it, hey? So Tanvi is the care manager and team leader at AFEA Care Services, who's our partner for this series. She does lots of different things there, but a lot of the stuff is around the NDIS. So she's been with AFEA for 4 years, and she really helps to organise the clients and assist with their NDIS plans and stuff like that. So we're going to be leaning on her expertise today, and we're really excited to have her on. So welcome, Tanvi.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tanvi, for the introduction.
No worries. Tanvi was just telling us this is her first Facebook Live experience, so she's welcome. We're seasoned at these now, so you will be fine. Everyone's really lovely.
I hope I'll be fine.
I'm sure you will. So tell us a bit about your background in the industry and with AFEA.
Yeah, okay. So as you said, I've been working with AFEA for around 4 to 5 years almost now. I've been in different roles in the NDIS sector. So I have done care coordination, which is more client, day-to-day things, and then intake to get inquiries, and now in the care management role, which is working very closely with the clients and making the best out of their NDIS plan. So my recent role as a care manager, I've been in that role for almost around 2 years plus now. And yeah, it has been great to work so closely with the NDIS participants and their families and helping them with, getting what they really need and the support that they can get from the funding. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much in terms of how I've been doing in different roles in AFEA. And I think the great part was I have been able to be in different roles. So different aspects of the NDIS is something that I can help everyone, understand and answer their questions in different aspects.
So important. And I suppose the reason we wanted to have you on and to run this was because the topic of the NDIS comes up in our Thrive, Tribe & Co. Connect page on a daily basis. Like there's, such vast ranges of experiences between really positive ones to ones where people are just left wondering what is going on and why is this happening. So I think this is just such an important topic to cover, but also educate our parents on, because it's something that we're going to have to do again and again. So if we can teach the skills, I think that, that is so valuable to our community.
And sometimes the language is so difficult to understand. So I guess that's where I can definitely help.
Totally.
Yeah, I think as well, if you don't know or you don't have a community of people pushing you or pointing you in the right direction, you don't know where to begin. Like it's really hard. Yeah. Do you go online? Do you click a form? And then, so there's a lot of waiting. So we're excited to have your input today. What would you say is the most rewarding or moving moment that you've experienced in your time?
Yeah, I think the client interactions that I have on a day-to-day basis, meeting clients and helping them getting what they need is really rewarding. In the last couple of months, I've actually worked, as an example, I can share with one of an elderly NDIS participants, and she had like really complex needs and had nowhere to really start. As to, she's got a plan, she's got so much funds, what do we do next? How do I get my supports? Doesn't have any family members to support. So when I was able to step in, understand what her needs are, and being able to organize all those needs so we can meet her basic requirements on a daily basis, and for me to see her supports in place and the difference in her life after having those supports is just so rewarding. And I think on a daily basis, when I'm able to do that with a lot of clients, I feel that I'm making a difference in their lives, and that is just so rewarding. So yeah, when I see my clients happy with what, and they have what they need, makes all worth it.
Oh, 100%. Well, you're bridging that gap, aren't you, for people? Like you're breaking it down for them. So that's invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And especially when they are stuck and they don't know where to go. And when I'm able to direct them in the right direction as to where they can source the information, if I can't do anything for them, that's also still very rewarding, because you've given them the right direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think like the NDIS was designed to give people more control and more access, and to be like life-changing. And when it's done properly, it can be, and it is life-changing. I know for us, when we got the supports that we needed after a very long process, it has absolutely changed our life and helped us live as a family, a more supported life, and give Imi everything that she needs. So what we're going to start right at the beginning today. So topic 1 for these essentials, NDIS essentials, is understanding the NDIS. So understanding what it's about, what it's aimed to do. So we're going to give you all these, basic things today. And then at the end of today, we're going to talk about the different topics that we're going to cover over the next few weeks as well. So we're sort of going to build upon that, so you have a really great base of knowledge and skills. So Tanvi, can you just start with really simply, like, what is the NDIS?
Yeah. Okay, so NDIS is basically an insurance scheme. So it was introduced in 2016. So it is a fairly new scheme compared to like the aged care scheme or any other government schemes. So it is still in its infancy stage, and it's, they are making changes and improvising almost every 6 months or to a year. But basically the scheme is to anyone who has a disability to help you get some government funding, which is approved through the right channels, and then you can have the supports in place for what you need on your day-to-day requirements. So I guess if you compare that before 2016, it was a block funding model. So in a block funding model, the organization would get all the block funding, and they would decide what supports they would give to a participant who has a disability. But with the NDIS, it's completely different. It's more of choice and control for the participant who has a disability. They get the funding on their plan, and they can decide what support they want, who they want it from, and how they want the plan to be really working for them. So the previous model, there was no flexibility, no choice. You had no choice. You had to accept whatever was available. But with the NDIS, it's all about choice and control. So I think that's the basic. It's an insurance scheme to make sure that you get some supports from the government for what you basically need.
I suppose the difference maybe around, previous funding and NDIS was like, this is based on goals, and then you can choose how to spend the funds to achieve the goal, right? Whereas before maybe they funded a service and then not a goal as such. Right. Is that?
Yeah. So with the funding, they are related to your goals, which can be short term and long term, and then you choose where do you want to spend that funding for, and how you achieve those goals over a period of the plan. So that is definitely a difference. Yeah.
I think that's really important for people to know, especially if they're just like say you're a mum or a dad or a carer just looking to get some support for a child just starting out, maybe an early intervention, you don't know that it's about goals to start with.
That's right.
I have a friend who was able to give me that information before going into that initial process, and I was like, right, so it actually made me think about that, because just starting out, it's a confronting question. What are your goals? What do you want long term and short term? What do you need for your child at that point in time, or your loved ones? So
Jane's just put an interesting comment in the chat, and she said before NDIS it was hard when you hadn't had a diagnosis, so it was harder to get the support, whereas now there seems to be a bit more access and flexibility.
And I think it is also more personalized. Your plan is very personalized for your needs compared to before, when it was a block funding. If, let's say, if an organization gets $100,000 in approval, they can decide which client gets how much funding. But in here with the NDIS, your plan is personalized for your goals and your needs, and you get the funding which is required to meet your goals. So that's definitely another difference.
Yeah, very interesting. I was just thinking, going back to that time, if we could have that, make people aware that goals are so important in identifying, it would be really, really helpful. So
we might cover that next week.
We will. So who is eligible to access the NDIS, or is that the $1 million question?
Look, it is $1 million question because I've also seen some people struggling to get on the scheme. So I guess there's basically, if we keep it very brief, there's 3 main criteria for you to be able to access NDIS. One is that you have to be an Australian citizen or Australian, like a permanent resident. So that's definitely a requirement. You have to have enough evidence to prove that you have a permanent and a long-term disability. So the diagnosis of your disability is very important, on the basis of which you get into the scheme. And the third thing is the age. So basically anyone under the age of 65 who has a disability which is permanent and long-term is eligible for NDIS. So from 0 to 65, there's 2 basically aspects. So from 0 to 6 years old, it is called early childhood early intervention, so ECEI. And after 7 years and up until 65 years, it is basically just anyone who is having a disability. It's not like they don't call it anything different like ECEI. It's just general, anyone under 65. But as you roll on after 65, it goes into the aged care scheme, which is completely different. So I think that these are the 3 criteria which are important for you to know if you are eligible, and having the evidence for your disability is something critical that they consider, and it has to be from a specialist or a doctor, like a formal diagnosis.
So let's talk about what's in an NDIS plan. So what is it, what's in it, fill us in on all those basics.
Okay. So an NDIS plan is basically which describes what your needs are and what you have been approved to access supports from. It has got different sections, and I'll just very briefly touch in terms of how the plan is divided. So usually the plan comes for a year's period or 2 years. Recently, they've started making it 2 years, but usually it is. The first part tells you how long is the plan, what's your, what your goals are. So the goals part, usually they break it down into short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. So your plan will say exactly what goals you have and how you will be working towards that goal, and who will help you achieve those goals. So that's the initial part. Then the second part is basically the funding that you have approved for, you've been approved for. So it has also different categories. So one is core supports. The second section is the capacity building. And the third section is the capital supports. So I'll just quickly, like very briefly say what are these 3 supports for. So basically the day-to-day tasks, that you need help with, or anything that is to do with your daily activities and access to the community comes out of the core supports. The capacity building part is basically when you want to improve your capacity in terms of learning new skills, or any therapies that you want to be getting through allied health, like OTs, speech therapy, physiotherapy, and just making sure that you improve your independence is where that capacity building funds play a role for. And the capital funding is basically to it is not always approved in your plan. It is a long-term goal for capital. Like if you want home modifications to be done for a particular physical disability, or if there's a wheelchair to be approved for, then usually they would put it under the capital funds. That's basically what is covered on your plan. And under each category of supports and the funds, they will tell you how the funds are managed, whether they are agency managed, plan managed, or self-managed. And you can decide in your planning meeting as to how you want them to be managed. But I think just managing the fund itself is a different topic that we can, I guess, discuss.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say, is that a different? That's like a can of worms, isn't it?
It is it's itself a different topic and so many aspects related to that, but I'm sure we'll cover that in the next sessions.
Yeah. Tanvi, do you know, Erin's just said, but if you're on NDIS before turning 65, you can stay on the NDIS.
Yes.
Is that's right?
That's right. You can choose to stay on the NDIS, which I actually always suggest my clients to do. You have much more flexibility and opportunity to just, get what you want compared to the aged care, which is a limited funding scheme. So in the NDIS, as I said, your plan is personalized to your needs. However, the aged care scheme is completely different.
Sure.
So, but you can choose to stay on the NDIS after 65. However, if you don't and you go back to aged care, then you can't come back on NDIS because of the age eligibility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And just so let's talk budgets now. So what do they take into account when creating our budgets?
Okay. Yeah. So basically, they would look at your goals. What is your goal? What do you want to achieve in your next 12 months or 24 months? And they would look at the different supporting documents that you've given, like your OT reports or your specialist reports, in which, let's say the OT report says that you need supports to build your capacity in terms of your mobility and how you want to achieve that. So I think that's what basically is taken into account when they create your budget as to what support you need and how often you need in a week. So let's say if someone needs speech therapy, and do you need it every week or do you need it fortnightly? What is the frequency that will help you? And the reports from the specialist will actually tell you what is going to be working for you, and that's how they would be approved for. So having some evidence as to what supports would help you build your capacity is critical. You can't just go in a meeting and say, I need physiotherapy every week. They're not going to approve that. You have to tell them why you need physiotherapy, what is going to be the effect of getting the physiotherapy sessions, what is going to be the outcome, and they will consider that and then approve it. You might ask for everything, but they might come back saying, no, I think you can only have fortnightly. So things like that, you need to have enough evidence when they consider to approve your funding. It has to be all evidence-based.
So really, our families and us included, we need to have, I suppose, that initial funding that's out of our pocket to be able to support, like to go to a speech or an OT or a psychologist or whoever to get those reports to then go forward and submit the applications. Correct?
Yes, and with the like the out-of-pocket cost initially before you go on to the scheme, there is a GP referral form. GP referral scheme where you go to your GP and you get them to write a referral, and some of those services for allied health are also covered through the Medicare benefits.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I might have to dig in more information as to what exactly is approved and how to access that, but there's definitely some scope of accessing those services through your GP under the Medicare benefits.
Sure.
We went through that route initially, and it was really great. They were really awesome, but we weren't given the level of support that I feel we needed, so we had to fight a little bit harder to then navigate the NDIS. So it'll be really individual, I would imagine, for every family.
That's right. Yeah.
We've just got a question from Karina in the chat. So she says, if we only have a diagnosis for autism and global development delay, but we know there's another underlying condition which is under investigation, does that mean the NDIS plan won't be correctly approved for the amount of hours that the specialists need? For example, intensive programs, physiotherapy, speech, and other behavioural therapies being rejected.
Yeah, that's something really that always comes up in a review meeting, that if you have some underlying condition which is still to be diagnosed and you don't have enough evidence to say I need support to having that condition as well supported with, it usually will have to be a review because they will not approve it in your plan straight away. Sometimes what they do is they give you a 6 months plan and they give you that 6 months time to get all the evidence and collect it, and then it can be an early review. And the next plan can be 12 months. So I've seen some plans where they are still figuring out exactly what supports they need. They'll approve a 6 months plan, or even sometimes 3 months, but not many are 3 months. Mostly they are 6 months. That gives you enough time to collect all the evidence that you need. However, sometimes if they make it a 12-month plan, you can go back and apply for review. Yeah.
It's good to know those options because often parents aren't told that they have those options in the first place. So knowing that you can ask for that is actually even just a handy bit of info. There's another question in here, and I was just looking at our topics for the next couple of weeks, and I don't think it will come up. But Kelly says, will you be talking about once a child reaches 7 years of age and to pass the eligibility reassessment? So I know you spoke briefly about early intervention being sort of under 6, and I know that for us, it was a tricky period in which Emmy's funding was reduced initially. So what's your tips around that tricky age group of sort of 6 to 7?
Yeah, I think I'll also have to come back with more detailed information on that in the next session. But briefly, what I can say is I think when the child is in that transition age, what the NDIS considers is with the family that the participant has, what is the parental responsibility? Because that's one of the main things that comes up in a review meeting as to if it is your parental responsibility, they will not fund it. And especially for those at that transition age, it is always the case that the plan comes with really low funding because they would say this is not necessary and it's not reasonable because it's your parental responsibility. So that's a very tricky part in that age. I guess that all the families and the parents really need to be quite mindful of what they ask for. And if they ask for any supports, it has to be evidence-based so that they will come back to you saying that it's your parental responsibility.
Yeah, and I think this is where it's tricky because and this has been our experience in the Connect page, is that often parents will need support because knowing what I know with a child with special needs, this is not normal parental responsibility. I have another child and I know what normal parental responsibility is. This is not that. This is well above, right? And we can't be expected to be awake 24 hours a day or be like taking on the role of 3 people at once. So for example, you know, for us to go to even a family barbecue and keep Imogen safe and like family members safe, we need an extra support person, because between Richie and I, we are not fast enough. There's not enough of us. So we had to show evidence that we needed a support person just for Imogen to support her in, you know, interacting appropriately and maintaining our family unit so we could actually access these situations, because we felt so isolated, right? So we had multiple things of evidence from school, from, you know, psychologists, from other care services that we've accessed to explain the severity of her behaviours and why we needed those supports. And it was a hard slog.
Yeah, it does take a long time to put those in place and get the evidence for them to understand why you need it, really.
It is tricky.
That's definitely the tricky part.
So Judy has said her 12-year-old daughter has been diagnosed very recently with ASD level 2. This is on top of ADHD and specific learning differences from years ago. We were knocked back on her DCD application for NDIS, and she intends to apply again, but she's very reluctant. So Judy's had a really long battle, but she's now got that ASTG diagnosis. So do you have any sort of advice for her in that situation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it is also important to understand why it was not accepted at the first place, what was the reason, and then address it accordingly. Because sometimes the supports that you ask for, some of them can get approved for, and then some of them don't get approved. And it is very important to ask that point with the planner as to why that was not supported. I mean, why that was not approved. And when you know the reason, then you go with that direction as to, okay, this was the reason it was not supported, and how do I tell them, okay, why we need that as well approved. So I think that's important to know why it was not approved at the first place. And I think definitely don't hesitate to keep applying for reviews is my suggestion. And the difference is sometimes, I think, in the planning meeting, with the plan, there are different layers in the NDIS, how your funding gets approved. You meet a planner, the planner puts a plan in place, and then it goes to the state assessment team who approves the funding. And the funding is usually in their own delegations. Each team has a delegation as to only this X amount of funding will be approved for your state for this period of time. That's why they negotiate as to how much can they approve for. So if the planner sees your child, the assessment team who decides the funding actually has no physically they have not seen your child who has a disability. Everything is paper-based that they decide on. So if something is not approved, always appeal, ask for a review, and basically give them as much more evidence as you can.
Before COVID times, and hopefully again soon, when we were doing our planning meetings, I actually do them here, and I make sure Imogen's home. So the planner meets Imogen, and I can't tell you some of the stuff she's got up to in these planning meetings, like climbing the pantry like a monkey, trying to get food down. She's run through like nude. She's stripped off and like literally runs through, and I'm like, grabbing her and covering her up. But like they need an understanding of what your everyday life is like. And in an office, it's hard to sort of explain that. You know, and when they can see the chaos, I think it helps them to write the report that they're going to send to the state funding team.
I think that's why it's important to attend the meeting in person compared to on the phone. I mean, I understand with the COVID situation, it has been difficult to attend in-person meetings, but that's what I always suggest my clients, as much as possible, attend the meeting with your participant, like with your child.
Yeah. The thing I was just going to quickly highlight is that, and if there's anyone who is potentially just coming to terms as a parent or a caregiver with what is going on with their child or their person that they are applying for, I didn't know initially that you need to, be really honest about what's going on and really not be afraid to bear it all. And it is a really difficult process from an emotional perspective. But I suppose your job, Tanvi, is that you help people with that. But only they're ready to be able to do that for you and really level with you. Because I remember I was still coming to terms with everything happening with Charlie, and I was very much like, oh, she struggles with this, but she's great, she's doing really well, and it's like, that's awesome, but it's not helpful in that process, right? So
it's very important to be honest to yourself and tell them the exact situation you are in. And I guess the thumb rule is always ask. There's no harm in asking. So ask for everything that you need. If they approve it, they approve it. If they don't approve it, you can appeal, but never hesitate to ask. It's always the thumb rule, I guess.
Yeah. Karina has a question. It's this might be better for next week. So I know next week's around your planning meeting and maximizing your plan, but it's around reports. So what is the right reports to make them see your situation properly? So I don't know. We're probably going to cover that next week.
Yep.
But then there was Nadine who said writing a carer's impact statement she also found useful. So I think it's great having like the combination of like getting all the reports, but then so I never had to write one of those. They seem to be new. Are they new, the carer's impact statements?
So the carer's impact statement, if I'm not wrong, there's different terminology you use. So basically it is like a supporting letter, which is what the services or the supports have been in place and how they have helped the client or the participant improve. I'm not sure if Nadine is referring to the same. I haven't really heard that term carer's impact statement, but what I know is carer support letter.
Maybe it's the same. I know a few of our like mums in our group have written what they've called a carer's impact statement as a supporting document. So I think it's almost like, you know, this is what life is like for us. And it's like maybe we can look into that a little bit more and see if there's like the more official term for it for next week.
Yep, definitely. And I think sorry. No, I was saying as part of some of the services we provide at AFEA, as my role of a care manager, I usually also write care supporting letters as to what services we have provided, how they have made an impact on the client, what was the challenge, how can they get more funding to overcome those challenges and things like that. So that is also a very good document. I mean, not just AFEA, I'm sure you can get it with the provider that you are with, because a lot of the times that document from the provider as to what supports are in place and if they are working or not is very important evidence.
There was one other question from Judy. Is dyslexia now covered by the NDIS? She's heard of one successful case with no other diagnosis. Do you have any experience there?
I know that the clients who have dyslexia, but with also another disability, so I might have to get back to you guys on that. Sorry, Judy, I don't have an exact answer on that yet, but I can find out for you.
Yep, that's good. Sorry, I'm just going through the comments. There's lots on there. A lot of people have said, like Amanda and Shani have both said they feel their carer impact statement is what really helped them with gaining the support that they need, which is great. And then people would like more info. So we will get you more info on carer's impact statement.
We'll definitely look into that and find some more information.
Hello, Miss. Are you dressing up behind Mummy there?
My heels. Very snaky.
Okay, so we hear this term all the time, reasonable and necessary. So what does that mean?
Okay, it is a very it's a very common question that comes up, what is reasonable and necessary. So I think I've put some points together as to how I can explain that in the best possible way. So I think the support that you ask for must be related to your disability, which is the main important thing. Like, you can't ask for something that is not related to your disability, that affects your day to day. So it needs to be related to your disability. It doesn't include the day-to-day cost of living, like your food, your school fees, things like that. So that is not covered by the NDIS scheme. It is basically only the supports that you need for your day-to-day, but not the cost of living. The supports that are likely to work for your child. So, for example, if you need someone to look after your child while you're not there, like an in-home respite, is something related to the disability, then yes, the client or the participant needs supervision, then yes, that's something reasonable and necessary. Or if your child meets the eligibility requirement and has a clear goal and has all the evidence for the planning meeting, then the NDIS will consider and ask you how they are reasonable and necessary. So basically, the supports that you ask for, I'll give you a quick example. So let's say if it's like a 10-year-old child, you're asking for supports with the day-to-day assistance. If you ask that you need some domestic assistance in your household because you're busy looking after the child, is it really related to the child's disability? They will ask you that question. And if you are not able to explain that, they're not going to approve your support domestic assistance, because it's not directly related to your child. But if you say, I need speech therapy for my child, then yes, that is related to a disability, so that will be then approved. So it has to be really very clearly determined as to how it is related to the disability and how that will impact your ability in terms of improving your daily life.
Karina's got a question, which I think can sort of relate to what you were just talking about in terms of like having other support. So all her family's overseas and her husband works full time. She's finding it hard to get time out for herself or as a couple because there's always stuff to do. And I know you mentioned the word respite just before, and we've had so many parents come back to us and say they mentioned the word respite in their planning meeting and basically got fingers shaken at them for it. However, we can't be expected to be on call 24 hours a day. So I think, and we will go into this when we talk about planning next week, but the language around how to apply for those things so it does relate to the disability is really important. Steph, can you just pop that question down because I can't see Tanvi's face? Thank you. That's a big question. Because I know because we do have like funding for a support carer. Imogen's goal and our family goal is around her developing independence to access the community. It's also around us maintaining and sustaining relationships and connections with our family and community. So that then allows us to have a support person to, help Imi build her independence in accessing the community separately to us. It allows us to attend social events so we can build our own relationships and help Imi build her relationships. And that's related to her disability. So I think the wording is going to be really great to teach people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way you relate it to your disability and explain why it is necessary, that's what that they would always consider rather than just asking without any explanation.
Yeah, that's what Sarah said in the comments too. She's found whatever supports or assistance we're asking the NDIS for, it's important that it directly relates to achieving the goals. And that's the key. And maybe the part that people aren't understanding when they're putting in their application, because I don't think everyone's been educated about it, really.
Yeah, and it's hard to know, especially if you're working on it on your first plan. Like, how do you know the language? And yes, you can look into the NDIS website, but not everything on the NDIS website is something a common man can understand, really, unless you've been in the industry or you are known to that terminology. So it's definitely the challenge, I guess, to get your first plan approved the way you want. But again, as I said, the key is if you're not happy, ask for a review. That's it.
Yeah. There's some comments asking for information about specific conditions. So what I'm doing, I'm just making a little list, and we're going to come back to you next week. So we've got some more time to look into that, because we just don't want to give the wrong information out about different conditions. Judy has said, to apply for NDIS, how do I do that? Where does AFEA step in? I'll let you handle that one, Tanvi.
That's a good question. So I guess if Judy, you the person you are caring for needs to be on the NDIS, basically there has to be a referral access request made on the NDIS website. It's an online form now that you can go on the NDIS website and apply for. Alternatively, if there's any challenge, feel free to call us. We can also actually help you to make the access request and also help you to understand what is the evidence and the supporting documents needed to make that access request and possibly get the approval for NDIS. So we can step in as early as you want, or whenever you want us to step in, really, to help you get support. We are very flexible. So if there's any challenge in terms of putting the access request, which is not a very big form, it's a very simple form. But yeah, as I said, we can help at any stage you want, and we would be happy to direct you as well to get the access approved.
Yeah. And our last question is around like finding your local LAC or LAC. And there was just a comment from Nadine around some planners saying domestic assistance is covered and some saying not, and it's tricky. And I know this is such a grey area, because it's depending on which LAC you get or which planner, it's almost like they make a judgment about what people can and can't apply for. So where do we find LACs? Like, what's your take on that?
Okay, I think in terms of finding the LAC, the best place to visit is the NDIS website. If you jump onto the NDIS website and just on the search bar, if you type LAC, it will show you the area in terms of where you live, and you put your postcode and it will show you the nearest LAC office, which is basically always in your local area, and it's very it's very close to the radius, and they have got a lot of offices, so it's not that you have to travel far away. You'll always find a local one, and if you go to the office or you contact them, they can definitely help you get a local area coordinator, as long as you are eligible to apply for the NDIS.
Okay, cool.
So I guess the website is the best place.
Yeah.
So many questions.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. Shani said, why does it take so long for a review to occur? It sometimes takes longer than the next plan. I'm not sure if that's your area of expertise, Tanvi.
I wish I could have that answer, but really no one has that answer. The NDIS is trying to, like the NDIA, the agency is trying to improve and have many headcounts in their offices, but it's really sometimes they have a lot of backlog that they are covering, and it goes as per priority. I should also, I think, mention that the complexity of the disability is always given priority in terms of how complex the needs are. Someone compared to lower needs wouldn't be assessed as quick as someone with complex needs. So there are different aspects, but nobody knows the answer why it takes so long.
Yeah.
Really.
There's a question from Judy about AFEA. So I know you do lots of things at AFEA. Yes. So maybe it would be good to break down, like in terms of NDIS support, what are the costs around that? And I know, because I know you do care services, which are like any care service, obviously we pay for through the NDIS. So what around the NDIS, like planning process and stuff, can you just outline how that works with you guys?
Yeah, so at AFEA, we have our support coordination team who can do the pre-planning meetings. They can actually also attend the meeting with you if you are happy with that, and that is a free service. So if you give us a call saying that I need help to get NDIS support and I don't have a plan, one of our support coordinators can get in touch with you and they can help you navigate as to how to access, and that is absolutely free. But when you have your plan, all the services that we provide can be covered through the plan. So there is absolutely no out-of-pocket cost. All your all your funding that you get approved for will be accessed for us to provide you support. And if you need anything apart from that, we also do have private services. So if you are wanting to appeal and have some more funding, but until then you need support, we also do private services. So I guess either, like, we are always able to help you no matter what in different ways. And if I can very briefly cover what services we provide. So yeah, we are an NDIS registered provider, and we will be able to provide supports under the core support funding, which is assistance with your day-to-day life, your personal care, domestic assistance, social support, community access, shopping, transport, medication administration, anything related to complex care, like bowel care, catheter care. We have our RN on board who can do the assessments and train the carers to provide the complex care needs of the clients. And recently, with the announcement from the NDIA, your core supports and your capacity building supports can be interchangeably used. So that just gives you more flexibility. And apart from the core services, we also do plan management, which is, if your plan is plan managed, we can help you manage the plan. And as I said, we have a support coordination team. So there are different aspects how we can help. And we actually work very closely with a lot of allied health professionals as well. So our support coordinators can help you find a good OT or a speech therapist as well.
Awesome. There was a question around COVID-19 and rollover from Jane. I'm thinking that might fit in really well with our topics next week with planning meetings. So I've just written that down and we might cover that next week. And I just want to tell you that I just got a private message from one of the ladies saying, today's session has been the best that she's ever attended. So I think you did a really great job on your first Facebook Live, Tammy. You're awesome. So we want to keep these to sort of 30 to 45 minutes. We've just hit 46. So we will be back next week. And I just want to give you an overview of the current topics that we've got scheduled to come up. However, there is flexibility in these and we want to give you the information that you need. So if you are not already in our Thrive Tribe & Co Connect group, please join that, and we're going to put a poll up where you can ask exactly what you want to hear over the next 3 weeks. So what we have down so far is that next week is going to be planning meeting to maximize your plan. So it's going to be, we'll do a little recap of what we've covered today, creating and wording your goals, which this is the part I'm really excited about because this is the part that's going to get you the best results. How to access supports, monitoring your funds and support coordination. So that's next week. The third week, we're going to look at managing and maintaining plans. What if you don't agree with your plan? Different types of plan management. So that's where we'll go through agency managed, plan managed, self-managed. And then week 4 is to be confirmed based on your feedback. So we need to hear your feedback on what you want to hear, and we will put that into the 4th week. Carol, yes, AFEA do care for the elderly is the short answer to that question, don't you guys? Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Lots of love coming in the thread. So, Tanvi, you've done a wonderful job on your first.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we will see you guys next week at the same time. Please share this with anyone that you think will find it valuable. We really just want to get this information out there and teach everyone these skills in accessing the supports that they need. So thanks again, Tanvi, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Steph. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.